Good day, everyone! Welcome once again to our podcast, Usapang Arkinalians, the Architectural Literacy. Nagbabalik na naman po kami, pero may bago ng mga kasama. Once again, I am Julia Garcia.
I am Jonah Cortez.
And I am Art Tadle. And we're here with our new guests na mag-share sa ating ng mga insight nila sa topic natin ngayon. So guys, pakilala naman kayo dyan.
Hi guys! Ako nga pala si Pearl Hipolito. I hope na may makuha kayo sa amin ngayong araw.
Yes, good day rin sa inyong lahat sa mga nakikinig. This is Luis Pasco. I hope makatulong kami sa inyo lalo na at maganda yung topic natin ngayon.
Tama ka dyan, Luis. Ang ganda nga ng topic natin ngayon. Pero bago tayo magsimula, gusto ko lang sabihin na I know this has been a hectic week for everyone kasi sobrang dami nating plates. Pero malay nyo, magustuhan nyo ang concept ng architecture sa Africa at makatulong sa future designs and concepts nyo.
So ngayon, ano nga ba yung topic natin ngayon? Alam natin na about siya sa Africa, pero ano nga ba yung meron sa kanya?
For today's podcast, we would talk about how David Adjaye showcases the beauty and uniqueness of African culture, situation, and especially their architecture from one town to another.
Syempre, let's give credits to our professor, Rizam Ranyosa, for the great topic and material that is given to us.
Guys, simulan natin yung tanong sa ano yung naramdaman nyo nung pinanood or habang pinapanood nyo yung video or documentary ni David Adjaye.
Dahil pabibo naman ako, pangunahan ko na. Hindi ako fan sa mga documentaries kasi usually nakakatulugan ko talaga siya. Pero yung documentary ni David Adjaye about Africa buildings makes me curious sa culture nila, lalo na sa architectural design nila. He jumps from one place to another that makes it more entertaining and interesting dahil sa mga discoveries at the same time how factors like government, their works, and environment affect their architecture. Sobrang diverse, di ba?
Yes. For me naman, watching the documentary concerning the local architectural structures in Africa feels like taking me back to the old times, as the styles and the approach of the buildings in the place was all thought out. Talagang pinag-isipan, especially regarding their functionality and aesthetics. We can say that all structures made are vital and will surely last for a long time. When we talk about their locality naman, the structure are not just built for the people who will use the establishment.
Sa akin naman, I feel amazed by the documentary because the structures in Africa are unique. Their designs are very functional and comfortable in the rural outdoor context.
Sa akin naman, I also feel amazed on what architecture of Africa looks like. It feels classy and at the same time, there are serene vibes because of its traditional infrastructure and at the same time, to the new style of the buildings.
For me naman, I think African architecture is so unusual. The documentary has left me in a maze. Moreover, despite their rural and outdoor environment, their construction is incredibly functional and cozy.
Yes, ngayon na alam natin na ano yung, how you feel naman, gusto ko naman malaman kung what do you like about the documentary of David Adjaye? Sinong gustong mauna? Siguro, ako na, 'no? Sige. So, as time passed, their architectural style in an African establishment was as broad as in other places. They always explore in the development of each structure in one place, whether modern or contemporary. There was a time when they preferred returning to where it started to find the lost architectural style by its nature and religion, and to discover how architecture built Africa. What I like about African structures are that they still manage to create beautiful and pleasing designs, even though there is a long gap in the advancement of technology comparing sa other places. African are determined by structures made by their hands that they are still undeniably beautiful.
Siguro ako, gusto ko yung how their design evolved through experimentation. They use locally sourced and trained on-site materials that cater to the basic need of ordinary poor people.
Ako naman, I like how they employ locally acquired and trained on-site resources that respond to the basic need of the regular poor people. And their design evolve via experimentation.
Sa akin, I like how they use the natural resources to build some big structures and at the same time, the traditional arts that is made along the structures to make it more creatively and good looking.
For me naman, like what I have said kanina nga, that David Adjaye jumps from one place to another that make it more interesting to watch. He talks about different cities and town in Africa. He travels across Africa to look into Africa's lost architecture heritage and show how beautiful the landscapes and building of these different places. Dito pa lang nakikita na ang daming architectural styles na sa bawat city na pinuntahan niya, may it be dahil na-colonize sila or dahil remote yung area. Kaya nabuo yung ganoong architectural style. Pero yung pinakagusto ko talagang part is yung pumunta siya sa Mali, sa town ng Dijen, where the Great Mosque of Dijen is located. Yung Great Mosque of Dijen is yung pinakamalaking architectural building na gawa sa mud at gawang kamay pa siya. Imagine ninyo kung gaano katiyaga at kahirap yung construction nila at tingin ko it made me lubog in learning more about African architecture. Hindi lang sila gumagawa basta-basta. They think about it. They give meaning to what they want to construct. At yun yung tingin ko na gusto kong ma-improve sa designs ko.
Ang interesting ng Africa, di ba? Pero sa tingin nyo, what is the important knowledge that is revealed in the materials that can be compared or used in the Philippine context? Para sa akin kasi, it is common that many people still choose to adopt this style of habitation in the Philippines. However, over time, the concept of the nipa hat has evolved into a more contemporary structure like what is seen in Africa. One example is the small huts comprising nipa and bamboo.
Tama ka dyan, sis. The Philippines also uses indigenous materials like bahay kubo, a small hut comprising nipa and bamboo. It is often time that many people still choose to adopt this style of habitation. However, over time, the concept of the nipa hut has evolved into a more modern structure like in Africa.
Sa akin naman, tulad ng sabi nyo guys, yung one of the important knowledges na natutunan ko during the documentary is that na mas minaximize nila yung paggamit ng locally available materials. Like dito sa Philippines, ang dami nating materials na wood, bamboo, and mud. And these natural materials na unti-unti na nating naisasantabi dahil sumasabay tayo sa modernity ng panahon.
Yes, I agree ako dyan. Mukhang pare-pares tayo ng sagot dito So, to add up sa mga sinabi nyo, sa akin naman, I think many people still choose to live in a traditional manner tulad nga sa bahay kubo I learned that our indigenous tribes in the Philippines, tulad ng wood and stone, also use the materials used to build traditional dwellings. Africa's structures have significance to the Philippine architecture. These days, the building style of the country has become broad, from its traditional houses to the contemporary structure approach. The style of Philippine architecture was inspired by its environment, from the culture to the religion. Back then, Filipinos could build remarkable buildings that are now historical sites that tourists may visit. Tulad nga ng stone-built ng Ivatan House ng Batanes.
Sa tingin ko, yung important knowledge na natutunan ko sa Africa and Philippines, both have a diverse culture. Makikita sa architecture design nila are mostly inspired by nature, religion, and it was also very evident kung sino-sino yung mga sumakap sa kanila dahil na-influence sila nito. Ang most distinct daw na style sa Africa according kay David Adjaye ay yung indigenous, Islamic, and colonial. Yung Philippines and Africa ay parehas nila idinedepende yung architectural style nila sa availability ng material sa lugar nila. Kung sa Africa ang gamit nila ay mud, sa Philippines, tulad nga ng nabanggit nyo, ay mostly gawa sa bamboo or nipa. Trivia lang din. Masingit ko lang. May nabasa din ako na article dated last 2015. Meron ng sumubok na mag-build ng mud houses dito sa Pilipinas in order to help Yolanda victims na nawala ng tirahan. It was an initiative idea by a former South African educator named Marcus Wendepol. Diba? Dahil sa pag-aaral natin iba't ibang architecture around the world, pwede din nating ma-adapt and ma-incorporate sa atin.
Wow! Mas lalo tuloy akong naengganyo to study more about other countries' architecture. But moving forward, may tanong ako. Sa tingin nyo naman, ano yung struggles ng Africa to keep up on the modern world? Siyempre, kasi 'di ba, mabilis na yung pacing natin ngayon. Para sa akin kasi, because of the struggles of African experience, they acquire professional expertise to address the issue of rural development. They creatively meditated on that and projected a new architectural strategy. Additionally, they succeed in presenting a spatial arrangement that re-engage useful outside space and is suitable for the rural African settings. Kayo?
Sige, ako. Africa faced obstacle that hindered from keeping up with the modern world, especially when their technology could be more advanced sana to create faster work to keep up. They thought about it imaginatively and devised a new architectural strategy. They also provide a spatial layout that re-engages usable outdoor space and is appropriate for a rural African context. Despite the hardship, they are still distinctively African, making their work powerful and contemporary, which will surely last as time passes. Sabi ko nga kanina, Africa's architectural style was as broad as other places, still discovering how architecture built Africa. They always explore on the development of each structure in one place.
And guys, alam naman siguro natin na there are lots of problems, struggles that the Africa are facing that hinder them to keep up on the modern world. And one of these are poor education. Because when poor education is existing in a certain country, and the outcome, there are insufficient licensed professionals that can possibly change nor improve the system of a certain country.
Sa akin naman, sa tingin ko, Africa struggles to keep on the modern world dahil most of them remain to be closed. Yung mindset nila mostly, I think, is to have a simple life na nakaka-survive naman sila sa isang araw. That I think became a stigma Kaya hindi na nag-i-aim mostly yung mga tao to discover and learn more from the outside places. They remain sa area nila. Kaya iilang lugar lang sa Africa and even limited Africans yung nagkakaroon ng opportunity to progress and create a name of themselves.
Actually, I have the same idea or thought that what makes Africa struggle to keep up sa modern world ay yung may mga lugar na kung hindi man sila close sa idea ng modernization na binanggit ni Jonah ay hindi naman sila maaabot or baka hindi pa sila naaabot nung modernization. Kasi it was seen at some cuts at the documentary na there are still places that can't even meet their basic needs. Katulad nga ng sinabi ni Art about sa education at yung kay Luis at technology that ends up sa katulad ng sinabi ni Pearl na hindi gano'n kadami yung professionals nila that hinder the development of Africa.
So guys, medyo mahaba yung program natin. So before we end our podcast, let me give the last question. Sa tingin nyo, what describe African architecture as it evolves to what it is now? Kasi for me, I describe African architecture as a natural homing movement because of its interactions to the environmental resources and movements that is used to make the user more attracted and comfortable to our nature.
Today, African cities are rapidly growing. The growth happening currently seems to be more inclined towards the modern, westernized way of architecture. But there are lots of architects doing relentless work in preserving the traditional, local architecture of continent. The availability of materials also influenced this shift in the method of building structures. Just like in other parts of the world, the availability of materials and new technology.
Today, urban areas across Africa are experiencing rapid growth. It would indicate that the present growth is learning more toward contemporary Western style buildings. However, there is still a number of architects that are working to conserve the traditional and indigenous architecture of the continent. This change in the method used to construct structures were also influenced by the availability of various materials. The accessibility of raw material, the development of innovative technology, and a few other elements are comparable to what is seen in other regions of the world.
For me naman, Africa is like a pupa that is evolving into a butterfly, a continent that shows a great development and follows the wave of modernization. Like what the other speaker said, that the architectural style of Africa nowadays is into modern Western style, but has the touch of the African style. They still want to preserve the traditional and culture of Africa, but also reinvent African architecture to cope up in the modern times.
Naman, I can say that Africa's architectural style are developing, and we can say that they keep up with other places in the world. The present trend appears to be toward contemporary westernized architecture. However, many architects work tirelessly to conserve the continent's history and native architecture. The availability of resources also affected this transition and structure building methods. Materials and new technology are available just as in other regions of the world. But they still manage, so yung sa kanila yung na-embody pa rin nila yung work with nature and religion.
Before we end our podcast, let us leave you two quotes that we excerpt from the documentary of David Adjaye. It caught our attention and gave us a takeaway thought as an aspiring architect in the future.
Ito, favorite ko. Complete sync with the Constitution, that is the justification for the building, and it's saying, Don't be afraid of your design. Don't be afraid your ideas. Be daring, be challenging, and be disciplined. Don't be afraid in Africa. Live like being part of the glory of the building. And light is the seen as the enemy all over the place. And you have heavy curtains and shutters and things to keep the light because light is part of everything. I'll be such.
Yung isa pang quote na gusto namin i-share is yung kay David Adjaye. Marries any sense of placemaking. Spacemaking, which refers to the consonants within something, which is public building, and there is a kind of celebration of modernity, of contemporary ideas in the building construction, and there is also a celebration of arts and indigenous crafts. Learning from an architecture that is not usually talked about and usually doesn't ring a bell whenever it was mentioned. African architecture is an architecture which speaks of a deeper meaning. It speaks of its people, about its history, and about the memories of the past, which they celebrate, commemorate through architecture.
Though there are many architecture design style adapted on this country, we can still clearly say that it is all distinctively African.
Siguro naman ay napag-usapan na natin lahat ng gusto nating pag-usapan. I guess that would concludes our podcast for today. It's a little bit more serious podcast than the previous one, but I hope the listener enjoyed it and sana hindi sila nakatulog.
Once again, thank you for listening to the Usapang Arkinalians, the Architectural Literacy.
And if you enjoyed this episode, you can give us a heart, thumbs up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you!